I've done a lot of DIY videos showing how to make various different pairs of Minnie Mouse ears, and today is also a tutorial on making Minnie Mouse ears, but these are for Minnie Mouse ears. Disney has been selling similarly sized little miniature pairs of ears as ornaments. They sell them at extremely insane prices, but it actually is super easy for how to make your own pair of little miniaturized mouse ears. You can easily turn them into keychains or even little ornaments. I'm going to show you how to make a full no-sew and then also a fully sewn pair of these. I recommend being pretty comfortable making full-sized ears because we're basically doing the same exact techniques, but we're sizing it down to a really fine scale. So let's get into the DIY for these. So to make the headband, you need shower curtain rings, and you need a kind of very specific, generally cheaper kind of shower curtain ring that is going to be a little bit flatter and thinner all around. These ones that I found work really well. They are Kenny brand. I got them at Big Lots for $1.50 for the set of 12. So generally you're going to want to look into the range of $1 to $1.50 per set of 12 for these type of shower rings to use for the headbands. Target also has some pretty cheap thin shower rings. These are also $1.50 each, but if you can kind of see, the Target ones are a little bit thinner, they're a little bit more rounded, and so these Kenny brand ones work a little bit better, but you could still probably get away with something like this, like they're using the Target ones. What you don't want are these kind of nicer, bigger, thicker, sturdier ones. These, I think on Amazon were $6 for a pack of 12. These are going to be sized comparatively much too large for your headband. You can really see the difference. The big ones are going to be proportionally really off for the scale and just much too thick. They're also going to be too difficult to cut. So I will link to these specific ones in the description. Otherwise, I know the dollar stores typically have ones that are pretty much the same and that also work really well. So turning these shower rings into the actual headband is pretty easy. You can see at the base how there are these little extra triangular bits that stick out. So you're just going to want to take some scissors and then cut basically right where it meets that triangular part. And these are actually pretty easy to cut. It takes a little bit of force, but really not too hard at all. And then just make another snip on the other side, kind of where that triangular bit meets up. Snip that off there. And then now here is where you have the actual headband base. So super easy. You can see we're just cutting off the base of the loop and then we're getting an actual headband shape. Now, if you notice that these edges are a little bit sharp, you can sand them down, but this plastic is pretty nice and thin and easy to work with. So next we can go ahead and actually cover our headband. I have some of this really pretty blue holographic fabric that I'm going to use to cover both the headbands and to first make some no-sew ears. Now, this fabric is pretty thin, so you might end up seeing a little bit of lumps and bumps when covering the headband. So you definitely don't want a thick fabric, but sometimes if you have something that's thinner like this, you might want to reinforce it, but we're just going to go ahead with this. I've measured my headband or shower ring around. I'm going to cut out a piece of fabric that is about 17 centimeters by 2.25 centimeters, and then we're going to wrap our miniature headband around just like we would a regular one. So I have my little strip of headband fabric all cut out. And what I'm really going to recommend for making these ears is getting a fine tip or precision hot glue gun. I'll link to the specific one that I got in the description. Having this fine tip is going to make things so much easier for working in these kind of much smaller, finer spaces. So just like we're sizing down everything, I recommend sizing down and getting a fine tip precision glue gun for this. So then we're really just going to treat this like covering a regular size headband. I'm going to add a little bit of glue at the top, and especially with this thin fabric, you want to make sure your glue is not going to be too lumpy and bumpy. And I'm going to set that in about the center of the fabric. Then we can add more glue to fully adhere it to the other side, and then just carefully pull and stretch around. Glue down this other side the same way too. I've got a little bit of extra fabric, so I'm going to trim that off to kind of make things as smooth as possible. This one is actually pretty good because we're going to fold it and glue it over like that. So we'll glue over this edge. glue on the sides to seal that there. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side here. So this is where the fine tip hot glue gun really comes in handy. What we're going to want to do is fold over one side and fully glue that down, and then fold over the other side so that meets in the middle. So with this, you just kind of want to work carefully and make sure you keep the fabric as smooth as you can, again, because this is kind of some thinner fabric. Gonna glue this edge around and in. Then we'll glue this other edge in. And then carefully add a bit more glue and fold the rest of the edges inward. So there we've got one side folded in, and then we'll just have the other side fold in, and it'll come pretty close to meeting in the middle. And there we go, we have covered our very first shower curtain headband. Definitely kind of have to get used to the fine, detailed work of this. Not as easy as covering a regular size headband, but overall, you're doing pretty much the same thing. But now we need to cover the inside of the headband. On my normal ears, I use some braid trim, and here I have some gross grain ribbon. You want ribbon that is about 6 millimeters wide. So 5 or 6 millimeters wide will give you good coverage. Normally what I do with my braid trim is I fold the edges over and I glue it down, but I want to reduce any amount of bulk, and I can also do this because this is a gross grain material. So I'm just going to very lightly burn the ends to really seal that in. So this edge now won't fray at all. Be very careful when working with fire. Then we can glue that onto our inside and then work it around. Now, before I glue this all the way down, I'm gonna see about how long I need it to be and then cut it there. And then kind of carefully hold this away and then fire blast this side so that it won't fray. And so in doing that, keep in mind you can't do that if you're just using a cotton. It has to be something like a polyester, otherwise you'll just set it on fire. But this way we'll keep all the bulk down. Now you could just kind of turn the edges in and hide that, but with these being kind of so much smaller, I like kind of debulking it as much as possible. And so that is how you make the actual headband portion of it and cover it and line it. So I'm gonna start showing some no-sew ears because especially for the miniature versions, no-sew is probably gonna be the easiest for most people, but then I will show how to make a fully sewn version, just like I make my regular ears. So I found that I like a template that is 4 centimeters in diameter to be for the ears themselves. And so from that 4 centimeter diameter circle, you're just going to wanna draw an arc at the bottom based on the shape of the shower curtain ring. And then this will be our base template. Then we wanna take some little cardboard, like from cereal. I have 3 wishes here, I'm obsessed with this. And then using our little template, we're going to trace and cut out 4 pieces from this thin little cardboard. I don't normally work with cardboard because it is not incredibly sturdy or durable or waterproof. So what I'm gonna do is also add a little bit of varnish to the pieces to kind of give them a little bit of a nicer coating, but that's a totally unnecessary step. I traced out my 4 circles here and I put a coat of varnish all on that before I cut it out. So once that varnish is dry, we can cut that out. And then we'll be using this sandwich method to make some no-sew ears. I have my 4 pieces of cardboard cut out. So now I'm gonna cut out 4 pieces of the fabric that I'm gonna be using for the ears and cut about 1 centimeter beyond the size of the template. Now with our fabric cut out, we can kind of use the standard no-sew method and glue it around our little piece of cardboard. We'll put our fabric down, I'm gonna have this side go down so that this side won't have any chance of bleeding through the fabric if it's a little see-through. And then we're gonna work through and glue the fabric down in small sections around the cardboard. Make sure to kind of pull it nice and evenly. This is where you're going to want to try and make sure you have kind of the cleanest, nicest, smoothest edge. Because that's what's going to give a good, nice shape to these ears. So we glue down to that edge, and then we're going to come down and glue the other side. And then we leave this base open here so that we can add a little bit of stuffing to it. But you can turn your ear around and kind of make sure things look nice and smooth. You'll also want to make sure you're very careful cutting the cardboard so you have a nice edge. And then before I stuff, I'm just kind of gonna glue down any of these creases and make these as flat as possible so that we can get a nice even sandwich glue with the other side. Now we just want a little bit of fiberfill so that we can go in and stuff our ears here. You could leave these as is, but these are going to be extra flat. So it's good to stuff them, and then I always use my little stuffing tool. That'll help kind of get all the fiberfill in there. Now that we have our ear stuffed, we can glue down the bottom edge. We'll first secure down some of this extra fabric, and then just pull and glue this over like all the other sides. All right, and there we have one of these done. Now you're going to repeat the same thing 3 more times so that we'll end up with 4 of these little ear sides. I've got my 4 little ear pieces all finished up, and now we can glue 2 of them together to create 1 ear. So we'll just add some hot glue around, not too close to the edge so that it doesn't totally all spill over. And then we'll just kind of push them together and create the best seal. With a fine tip, you can also go in closer to the edges and add a little bit more glue and hold that down. This first ear is complete, and now there's tons of things that you could use as trim to hide the seam. I have these fun little beads. You'll just want some sort of trim that's kind of small and is a good fit for the size of the ears. And I like to glue this type of edging trim onto the ears before I attach them to the headband. And this is going to be a nice additional use for the fine tip glue gun. Just add in our trim around the edge, and then we can hide the seam there. Now if you have a really nice clean edge, you can leave it as is, but typically with no-sew ears, you'll use some kind of trim to hide that sandwich together. Trim off right at the base, and this first ear is done, so now we'll repeat the exact same thing to finish our second ear. Both of these ears are finished up now and ready to glue onto our little shower curtain ring headband. I've measured and I've marked the center of my headband, and then I've measured 1 centimeter down on either side. So that'll give us an ear spacing that looks right about like this. You can adjust it kind of however you want. To attach these onto the headband, if you want and have some patience, you can use some E6000 glue, but I'm just gonna go ahead and use my fine tipped hot glue gun and put glue right in the center there, and then hopefully we won't get too much spillover, but if we do, we can always add some trim on the very base of the ears. And we just have to glue on our second ear here. And then the ears themselves are done. Now, like I said, if your edge here isn't super clean, you can always add a little bit more trim and hide that at the base there. But I actually kind of like this as is, so now the last thing that we have to do is add our bow on these ears. Last up, we need to make our bow. So I'm scaling my measurements down by about 2.5 times. So I have a piece of fabric for the bow that is 11 by 8 centimeters. And then I have the little bow center wrap that is 1.75 centimeters wide. And then you'll probably want it like 5 or 6 centimeters long. So this is gonna be made exactly how all of my other bows are made. We're just gonna do the standard fold down, kind of sandwich and glue all the way around. Once you have that folded in and glued down, we can do the same thing for our little bow center. Now for our bow, we're going to fold in our ends so that they meet in the middle, measure so that the sides are even, and then glue both of those edges down. Then we want to take our fabric, we're going to fold over, fold back, and then fold over so that it ends up looking like this. This will be how the back looks, and then just add a little dab of glue in between each of the folds. Then we're going to take our bow center and first just glue it down onto the base. Now, if you just want these to be a miniature pair of ears, you can continue on with the bow and glue it on just like that. But before we finish and glue this bow center down, this is a step where we're going to either turn this into an ornament or into a keychain. If you want to make this an ornament, all you have to do is take whatever ribbon that you're using and then in the back, tuck that in, and then you can go on and glue it down, and then you can have a little ornament hanging like this. But I'm going to turn this one into a little keychain. I bought a little keychain set on Amazon that I'll link to. In addition to the circular rings, I also got some lobster clasps, but I'm going to show them just as is. So there'll be your jump ring here, and then there'll be the rest of the keychain here. What you want to do is kind of in the back of the bow, we're going to loop the jump ring around like so. So that if we can see, this is going to be the back of the bow like that. Then we can take the rest of our keychain here and then loop that through the jump ring. So then we just close up our jump ring so it's all secure like that. So again, this is the back of the bow, and then we just take the rest of the bow center, fold that around, we cut off the excess, and then I always glue this little extra edge in and then glue that on. Just like that. So you can see we have our keychain jump ring hooked on, and if you want to make an ornament instead of the jump ring, it'll just be some ribbon that you want. And then we just take our bow and then glue it onto our little ears. And there we go. Here is our super, super adorable no-sew Minnie Mouse ear keychain, which can also be turned into an ornament. Then I'll also quickly show how you can make these using a full sewn method. Now, to make fully sewn little miniature ears, you're going to make the headband in the exact same way, except I make sure to not really put any hot glue on the top of the headband around where I'm going to sew in the ear, so I'll hot glue at the very top and then at the base there. But this is otherwise exactly the same, and you'll notice this is definitely a thicker type of fabric. This is more like a minky fabric. For ears of any size, it's definitely easier if you have a kind of fuzzier, thicker fabric if you're going to fully sew them on. So in addition to the little 4 centimeter diameter circle from earlier, I also now have a 4.4 centimeter diameter circle, and this is the template used for the sew line. So same exact process as the larger one, scaled down, and then this other template shows me where I'm gonna leave open at the base to stuff them. Because these are mini, this is where if you don't have a sewing machine, it's totally fine and not too time consuming to hand sew these, but I'm gonna quickly run these through my sewing machine and make some little tiny circles. So I have my 2 little ears sewn up, and then I cut off all the extra fabric Again, leaving some extra fabric at the base where we're going to sew them together. You'll want to use a little stuffing tool to help turn them inside out and make sure the circle is all nice and full and flush. Alright, so next we have to stuff these ears. Normally I use about 1/4 inch thick foam for my regular ears, but since these are teeny tiny ears, we're just going to use this regular craft foam, and then using the 4 centimeter diameter circle template with the arc, we're going to cut out 2 of those. So we have our 2 little pieces of craft foam, and then we can just, exactly like I do with my regular sized ears, kind of taco slide them in, and these will help give a little bit extra stability and support with them. Help makes the stuffing look a little bit nicer. We got both our ears set with the foam, so now we can go back in with some Fiberfill and then add stuffing. You want to add it on evenly on each side of the phone. I've got these ears all stuffed up to my liking, and the rest of the steps are going to be exactly the same if you've seen any of my regular sized ear tutorial videos, where we're gonna fold these closed, sew them together, and then sew them onto our headband. So then to sew these closed, we're just going to slide in our needle. Make sure that thread is tucked in. Now we fold in one side like that, and then we tuck in this other side. So the edges now look like this, and then just a super quick few simple whip stitches to close this up. Then we can just tie this off and then hide in the thread. And then you can repeat the same process for the next ear. Both ears are done, so we can now sew them onto our little headband. Like before, I have marked the center of the headband by measuring it, and then I've marked about 1 centimeter down for where to sew on the ears. So to sew these on, we thread through the base of the ear there. And then on our headband, we're gonna go just right above where we've marked, and then pull that tight. And then we just do a little rotation, stitching into the ear and then stitching into the headband. And I always sew around twice to make sure it has an extra strong hold. But with these mini ears, they're not really being worn. They're not gonna be put through as much, so you probably could get away with just once, but 2 times I'd say is always the charm for when you're sewing ears onto headbands. I've sewn around once, but I'm gonna sew around one more time, tie off the thread, and then attach the second ear. So here is what our ears look like all sewn on together. You definitely can do this with any type of fabric, but I like fabric that is a little bit thicker and fluffier because it's a lot more forgiving. But the last thing I need to do is make a bow. I'm going to do that the exact same way as I showed earlier, but then maybe let's turn this into a pair of ornaments. So I've got the bow all set like this, and I have just a little bit of this beading left, so I think I could actually use that as a cute little ornament hook. So we'll just continue to fold over our centerpiece. So with this, you can see you can very easily adjust this around. I'm gonna test doing a little glue attachment knot, and because I really like the length of this, I might try and hide this little edge behind the bow. So then I'm just gonna slide this around and then tuck this right underneath the bow. So now there, it is totally smooth, and then we'll just add some glue to the base here so that this for sure stays in this orientation. Now we can grab our ears and then glue on our bow. And then here is a fully sewn, super cute little ornament of Minnie Mouse ears. Here is our no-sew, and here is our full sew miniature set of ears. These turn out so cute, and they're super inexpensive to make, really just needing the shower curtains. There are endless ways to be creative with making these. What you can also do is take some of this thick foam and just cut out 2 pieces as the base ears themselves, and then just decorate this. I think this would be really good if you wanted to do a full rhinestone look. You can also make these out of your own customizable printable fabric. This is material that I've used in a few other DIY videos. That way, if you want, you can scale kind of fabric and the pattern to perfectly fit onto these ears. And then I also made miniature pairs of ears that I make for my Etsy shop, Confectioneer Shop. So I made a little miniature pair of lollipop ears and made that into an ornament. You can see this is the same little beading trim I used on the other ears. And then I also made a pair of miniature beignet ears. And so this was done using the full sewn method. Got a cute little polka dot bow, and on this I removed the O-ring and I bought some extra and added on this little lobster clasp because I actually quite like these in terms of keychain usage. So it'd be cute to create a full line of little miniature ears like this. But these turned out so super cute. So easy to convert them into either a keychain or an ornament, doing them fully no sewn or sewing them. So you can have your own little miniature pair for way cheaper than Disney sells theirs for. I hope you enjoyed this DIY video, and I'd love to see some of the miniature mini ears that you create. They're a little fiddly and not the easiest thing to do, but I think the end product turns out awesome. So thanks for watching.